In Web 2, what people say is your first goal is to find your first million paying customers. In Web 3, it truly is to find the first 10,000 co-owners of your network, right? Because when you're decentralizing ownership through a value capture token, whether it's a governance token or it's the NFT of your project itself, you are truly bringing on co-owners of your network in these community members. And so being comfortable getting concierge, getting white glove kind of service to actually find these first key community members, that is the cornerstone of what you're building going forward.
How do you scale Web3 projects in 2023? How do you build? How do you grow? How do you get the right growth stack to ensure that you know your community, you know your most valuable members, you know how to build, you know who to focus on, and you know who's not engaged? I spent a great hour with 3 experts. One is from Axie Infinity, Sky Mavis. He's the VP of Growth there. Quinn Campbell, amazing individual. Also chatted with Jon Hook, who's the CMO of PlayEmber. They do a lot of Web3 growth and advertising. And Dan Reynolds, who's a marketing lead at First Light Games, who's releasing a cool Web3 game. We talked about growth and hacking growth in Web3 in 2023. And I'm cross-posting this from a different podcast that I do because I think it'll be super valuable. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is kind of cool. This is kind of neat. We're talking Web3 growth hacking. We're talking with some very cool veterans in the space and people who know a little bit about what they're chatting about. And we're going to talk about some of the newer methods that people have used to growth hack Web3. We're going to talk about some of the older methods that people are using, Web2 and other forms of marketing that are still working in Web3, and maybe what's on the cusp and what's still coming. Let's start by giving everybody a chance to kind of introduce themselves. Dan, why don't you kick us off?
Hey, everyone. Great to be here today. So a little bit about me. I've been sort of in the industry now, talking about crypto here for the last few years, deep diving into NFTs, spending a lot more money than I definitely should be. Before that, I was the CMO of a nonprofit organization. It was an international-based organization that used to pick up trash from the beaches. And more recently, I dived into sort of the Web3 industry, working for a project called Melon, a creator NFT platform. And I've spent the last year working at First Light Games, delivering our game, which is due to launch very soon, called Blast Royale.
Nice. Looking forward to seeing that. Looking forward to hearing a little bit more about what's in that game, how it works, what the mechanics are, and how you're going to market that. Quinn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure, John. Thanks. So my name's Quinn Campbell. I'm the VP of Growth at Sky Mavis. We are the developers of Axie Infinity, which is a larger NFT game at the time. Before this, I actually was working in kind of traditional mobile games publishing, which I really, really liked until I started to kind of get a better grasp on how co-optive I think a lot of the middlemen and publishers and distributors are in traditional gaming. It's like that in music, it's like that in movies and TV as well. Right around that time, I came across NFT gaming. I saw this idea of direct-to-community distribution, taking the middleman out of the system. And me, as a middleman, I knew that was the future, and I had to be a part of it. So it's all kind of rolled from there.
Very cool. Axie Infinity, of course, super interesting what you guys are doing. Lots of challenges, lots of interesting stuff that you're kind of trailblazing on. John, give us a quick intro.
Yeah, thanks, John. So similar to Quinn, spent a lot of time in like Web2, like mobile gaming and ad tech, and running companies in that space, which was kind of fun, like Ad Colony, Oma Games, Boombit, and for about the past 12 months now, I've been pretty deep into Web3, having a lot of fun, testing some stuff, and currently CMO at PlayEmber, which is just a great example of this journey we're on, that actually it's using mobile games, but actually it's all about helping and empowering creators, artists, brands to create and monetize and distribute their content and services, but in just a very different like Web3 way that doesn't involve just shoving rewarded videos in games and saying click here. It's a lot of fun building and architecting that out, and looking forward to sharing some of the that we plan with all of you.
Awesome. Why don't we kind of start here? I kind of want to level set. Where are we in Web3? Where are we? Web3 is pretty connected to crypto, obviously. And there's interesting things going on in that. Are we in, we've had a hype cycle. Where are we now? Are we going up? It seems like kind of people are holding their breath. There was such a run up, and now there's kind of like the air's been let out of the balloon. Where are we? What's going on? Jon, can you kick us off there?
Where are we? Well, I think it depends on who you're asking. Right? If you're a trader or maybe you're a PFP artist, maybe things aren't so great right now, depending on which protocol and ecosystem you're into. If you're a Web2 normie, same as usual. Like there's some bigger things going on in the world right now, and
Maybe you're celebrating.
Yeah, exactly. You probably are not down massively on your NFT bag because you don't have a bag, right? So yeah, I think it really depends on the sort of lens you're looking at. But given we're all talking about gaming, I think the two big challenges, if I'd separate them in summary, Web2, you still have people playing games. The key challenge there still is around the monetization of those players, and depending on the genre, and thanks to Apple and ATT, that's still a huge challenge. And sadly, seeing a lot of studio closures at the moment because the distribution of games in Web2 is pretty hard, linked to monetization. In terms of Web3, for me personally, given the two people that we've got on this call as well, I'm really excited because there's so much innovation there. We're seeing finally some of these like mobile, like blockchain going mobile. So some of these legitimate Web3 games, the way that we always hoped they would be, are now starting to drop and go live. So for me on that Web3 side, it's just pure excitement right now.
Quinn, let's bring you in and ask you kind of the same question, because it does feel like there's some actual real cool stuff happening. And there are some people celebrating on silence. See, I told you this Web3 stuff was all dumb anyways. But are we entering the cusp of new innovation?
Yeah, I think we're in this like really kind of beautiful moment of a bear market. Where we're able to actually like build every day in a way that only a bear market truly kind of affords for you. When you're in this like absolutely crazy frenetic bull market, every morning you wake up, you literally feel like you're already behind the eight ball.
Yes.
And like there's something intoxicating about that, but there's also something that, kind of like is a drag on actually shipping. Whereas I think, there's definitely a shakeout going on, but the projects that are able to really survive and build through this bear are going to be the foundation of the next decade of NFT gaming and of Web3 as well, right? And I think we're seeing the shifts of this already, because so many projects, especially during the bull, there was a new NFT gaming project like almost every day. And 90% of them were basically just yield farms or DeFi protocols with like a gaming wrapper around it. And that's already starting to disappear. Now you're starting to see these game studios go back to their roots of like creating a fun, sticky core gameplay first, and then just sprinkling some Web3 magic on top of it.
Dan, let's bring you in. It's funny because we have this confluence of craziness, right? So we had the Web3 hype cycle and the bust, and now this opportunity to build. But we have this whole economy thing that's going on, right? We have this whole supply chain thing that is affecting the whole world. We have inflation. We have other things. It's all coming at once. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think Quinn really hit the nail on the head with that. Really, so much is in the real world is uncertain right now, and people are being a little bit more careful than usual. I think again, I do really think this is quite an exciting time being in Web3, because it really, so many of those projects that aren't really ever going to be building anything, that are driving hype, and then before you know it, they're gone and you never see them again. It's not so easy for them to be around in this market where we are right now, because there isn't the hype that there was when we were right at the peak of things. And I think this really does give you an opportunity to take your time to research projects, to see what they're actually doing, and follow along the real hard journey that the developers of a game or project need to go on in order to become successful. So, I think it's a really nice time, even though, you could say it'd be great if, we launch right when the bull market starts and, so many things like this. But I think it's a really good and exciting moment to be building something proper.
Quinn, you talked about kind of this return to sanity of actually building something that's a game that's fun, that's enjoyable, that's a good thing to do, and then sprinkling some Web3 magic pixie dust on it. Does this kind of return to basic principles mean that marketing Web3 experiences, Web3 games can lean heavily on, let's say, traditional mobile marketing or digital marketing techniques or not?
That's a really, really interesting question. I think it's one that we're trying to solve for every day. So far, what we're seeing is the answer is kind of like yes and. Our Web3 channels are still very productive for us, and they're still excellent growth channels. As we're exploring some traditional Web2 channels as well, like for performance marketing, for instance, we're actually seeing some interesting success there as well. And if anything, I think it will kind of segment out who the users are, right? You can always still go after this like degen Web3 user base with kind of a higher propensity to spend. But if you will really want to go to the masses and onboard the next 100 million, which is like, how do we convert Web2 to Web3? That's the existential question in our space right now. Using the traditional channels to reach them where they're comfortable is a big, big thing to solve for.
Jon, what are your thoughts there? I mean, what is traditional, right? When Web3 started, right? 2 years ago, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, the traditional thing was, hey, I've got Discord, I've got Telegram, I've got a variety of other sort of new type channels, and I'll build a lot of people and I'll generate a lot of interest and things will happen. That never worked for me personally because maybe I'm just an old fart. I don't know, but those channels didn't work for me. They're high noise, low signal, so busy, hard to, really parse what's actually happening. Are those losing some of their power, or are we just needing to figure out different ways to use them?
Again, I think it comes back to just the basics that we all know when you're making a game is who are you targeting and what is their motivation? And I think to Quinn's point, this is the interesting thing that we're trying to figure out, because if you think about these, what we don't know, so let's take Axie Infinity, right? Like you've definitely got like some of the early adopters of like Web3, like Web3 degens. They know all about NFTs and tokens and staking, but I don't have the analytics or anything to show for this yet, but 100% there are some people in there that love mobile games, right? And play mobile games every single day. It's just at the moment they found something really sort of new and innovating that also fits the player model that they're looking to explore in terms of putting something into an amazing fun ecosystem and actually getting something out, whatever that is, whether it's financial or friendship or some of the other cool stuff that Quinn's playing around with. So I think then when you start thinking about channels, where it really depends, because there are some people that play a like Web3 game and they expect Discord, right? That's their community, that's their friendship base, that's how they interact. Whereas sort of growing up in hyper casual and seeing that evolve, it was all, it's Facebook, and then it's Facebook and Snap, and then it's Facebook, Snap, and TikTok, and now it's it's all TikTok. Like, what happened to Snap? Oh yeah, don't forget about Facebook is Instagram. And kind of seeing that demographic evolution as sort of everyone, goes through different platforms and, it grows up a little bit depending on where they migrate to. I think that's one of the things that I don't know the answer to, but we're playing around with, right? If you're going to onboard the normies, well, where are they? Do they know what Discord is? Or because of the way that you manage and build a Discord channel is very different to building a TikTok channel. So it's kind of super fun to hack that and then try and understand, well, how do you get people jumping between the two? Should they jump between the two? How do you track them between the two? Don't know. But these are all the things that are going to get, we're all trying to figure out. That fast forward a few years, a bit like we've all worked in like Web2 publishing businesses, and it's kind of like, look, this is just how it works. This is just where you advertise because it's just what you do. Maybe in a couple of years, we'll be sat here at Consensus or, I don't know, Token 2049, and we'll have the rule book for how to do this.
It's funny, right? Because there was a rule book. You knew what to do, right? You put capital to work on a certain number of partners, right? Dan, you're dropping a game pretty soon. I mean, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I think it's we are at this moment where nobody really knows what the answer is. That nobody really knows whether to
That's not comforting.
yeah, that's right. No, but
I
I
think
think,
that's what's most exciting about this.
yeah, I think, you've got this sort of, the Web3 sort of speculators, traders, and you've got, people that are playing mobile, PC, console games, that haven't yet even, they do not own a single piece of crypto or NFTs. And the challenges, and the challenge that we face right now is to, try and strike that balance between, tapping into this, the world of Web3 speculators, but also aiming to take the game, mainstream around the world. So one thing that we're focused very much on right now is to do what we know we're good at, which is creating a good game that's going to be enjoyable, whilst using as much of the blockchain technology as possible, and staying in the loop with all, everything new that is coming out, or the emerging technology within the space, to use that to essentially bring in, real gamers into Web3, and sort of convert them into Web3 gamers by having a really good game that's built on the blockchain. So we're sort of trying to strike this perfect balance between bringing in gamers and Web3 traders and speculators and NFT owners at the same time. So I would say it's our biggest challenge, and I'm not going to come up here and say we have the exact answer. We'll tell you in, a year's time probably, but.
And those people have different incentives, right? Gamers, let me have fun. Speculators, I'm here for a reason. This is work. And you know a little bit about that, Quinn. I mean, Axie Infinity, kind of the OG here a little bit, right? I mean, people have been farming and working and leasing out property or opportunity to earn in Axie Infinity for some time. How do you see this?
Sure. Yeah. So I think what's so inherently different about, really trying to grow and then manage at scale a community of a Web3 game versus Web2 is just the sheer variety of users or players or archetypes that you have in your ecosystem, right? And Jon, I think the last time we were on a podcast together, we talked about this as well. But we have like 11 or 12 different player archetypes that we've identified within Axie.
Wow.
Only about half of them actually play the game. So that's where it's just a complete, left turn from what, I'm used to coming from Web2 gaming. Within that half of those archetypes who play, there are like hardcore PvP battlers, there's esports people, there's people really just playing for fun and escapism. And then there's also like, scholars and SLP earners. Within that half who doesn't play, we have people who are doing nothing but like heavily participating in our governance discussions for, this eventual decentralization of our DAO. We have people who are just only content creators or like community tooling devs. And there's absolutely no way to argue that person is any less valuable to us than somebody actually playing the game every day, or vice versa. And so it even makes it hard to actually come up with entirely new like LTV equations and figure out who we're really buying and what to optimize for at the end of the day. But it's all just the fun of building on the frontier.
You are blowing my mind here, Quinn, because I'm listening to you and I'm saying, this is sure, there's a game, but it's much more than a game.
It's much more.
It's a community. In fact, it's kind of a digital prototype of a society almost, right? With different people who have different roles doing different things based on what they're interested in, what they care about, what they want, what they're there for,
what they're passionate about. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, we call ourselves a digital nation. I'll do a quick plug. This book, The Network State, by Balaji Srinivasan, is kind of my Bible right now, so I highly recommend. But yeah, I think that's absolutely true, right? And even like a lot of the community side of what our team is doing is trying to think about how can we provide welfare, not just monetary welfare, but any kind of benefits to your life as a community member, as a Lunasian, basically, that we can. So we're even running like, almost like the food pyramid, right? Like exercise and diet things, just like healthy mindset kinds of things. Anything that we can do to actually bring welfare to our people is a positive kind of exercise for us.
Let's talk about interconnectivity. If we talk Web3, if we talk people own certain things, there's portability there, there's decentralization. what about Web3 experiences that you guys are invested in or building or playing is portable, is something that I can take and I can put in my bank, quote unquote, digital bank or something like that, or I can take and maybe even use somewhere else. Is that a core piece or is that ancillary? Dan, how are you thinking about that with First Light Games?
Yeah, I think I think we are at the very, very early stages of actually seeing this in action. I think, looking at what we want to do long term with our game, creating the sort of the blast burst and having NFT items that people own and being able to transfer them throughout different games that we develop along the ways, but also, creating avenues where people can actually port their NFT pieces into different games, or to, go further than just games themselves and to be able to do even more than that, whether it's, lending, whether it's, some form of utility that's beyond the game itself. I think this is something that we are actively exploring. And I think this is really where long term, this is going to be creating an entire world of opportunity around what digital ownership actually means. And I think right now we really are just touching into, even the word interoperability, it's getting thrown around, metaverse is getting thrown around, yet we haven't really.
Somebody said the M word.
I think, it's exciting. It really is exciting. I can't wait for it all to happen. And being part of this, one of the builders in the space of Web3 and tapping into that whole world of, this metaverse and how it will plan out. I think, I think that is going to be the key driver of, adoption as well, of being able to own digital collectibles and, have the control over what you do with them and where they are and what you gain from it and what value you derive from it.
Yeah. Jon, I want to bring you in here. Somebody just said the M word, as I said and mentioned it. And you start thinking about that. And you start thinking about, okay, interoperability. I can see it in our family of games. Great. Hey, it's better for our studio because you can use this from that game over there. Excellent. It's harder for people who have come up with maybe a scarcity mindset, or this is what we are building, to say, okay, you can take it and put it in another publisher's game or something like that. That's more challenging as well. But there's some things that make some sense to do that and some things that may not, right? If I look at a physical reality, I could take US dollars and convert them to euros or something like that. But if I have, let's say, a Slovenian certificate of citizenship, it's not worth anything in Croatia or something like that, right? What's the balance there, Jon, as you think about Web3, metaverse, and portability?
I think that's like an entire panel discussion, but I'll give you my quick 6 cents. So,
we need the solution in like 3 minutes from you.
Okay, so quick summary. I think what you're seeing is, I mean, Quinn touched on it. I think you've got like Web3 native companies that understand that the key piece in that is what we're actually building is we're reimagining like culture, like social trends, like monetary, I'm not going to say policy, but monetary things we can do with like financial vehicles. And that gets very exciting. And I think when you get under the bonnet of what people think are Web3 games, and I love that, the digital nation, that's actually what's being built. And that blows my mind. That's also what's really exciting versus I think when you look at traditional gaming, and I don't mean that in a patronizing way, people that have grown up in Web 2, what I'm seeing is this idea of decentralization and monetization playing out as actually walled gardens, because they're like, hey, hang on a minute.
Yes.
I don't want my asset being used in all these third-party games. I want to control that. So I'm going to create a closed ecosystem around my games with my own marketplace that gives you the ability to own these IAPs and move them around games. So I think you're already starting to see that, not just in gaming, you're seeing Yuga Labs play around with this as well. So I think that's what you're going to see in terms of the evolution of marketplaces. You'll see your specific marketplaces around games. And I heard Z talking about this at Magic Eden last week in San Francisco, that you will also then get like more vertical, very specific gaming marketplaces that have got, really heavy tooling and infrastructure for some of these bigger AAA games, as well as some sort of broader marketplaces like Fractal, for example, that have maybe not tailoring specific genres, but have the kind of key tools and infrastructure you need for a wider selection of games. But that's really how I see the initial split right now. And again, it makes sense because at the end of the day, we all have businesses to run. And you made that earlier comment about, kind of app downloads and attribution. And, if you're a traditional Web2 company, you're probably publicly listed and you have a share price and, you need to make money, and that's what NFTs are. They're another monetization tool that you can deploy. So really, I'm kind of seeing that versus, what's really exciting here and is going to, redefine, I think, generally the world that we live in now is kind of where, Axie are headed and a few others, which is, hey, we just have, a really interesting opportunity here to actually blend together everything. And it just so happens that the vehicle we can do that through is gaming. And I think that's just really cool.
That was a great job, Jon. You're right. That's a full panel. I mean, that's a couple of years of evolution in the industry to figure that out if you even get close to it. So that was a great job. And also a good segue, because I want to turn, and Quinn, will probably bring you in first here. I want to turn to the thought of a Web3 marketing stack. We're starting to see some evolution of that. We're starting to see some tools. We're starting to see some things like wallet relationship management, customer relationship management for the Web3 era. We're starting to see an attribution tool that's built specifically for Web3 in Spindle. I believe that's Antonio
Garcia Mendez or something like that.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.
Something
formerly from Apple and I believe Facebook, a couple different places. Eric Soufer has invested in that, a lot of others as well. Quinn, what are you seeing in the development of a Web3 marketing stack? Is it super nascent right now, or is it starting to kind of emerge out of the mist?
Maybe both at the same time. It is super nascent, but like over the last 2 months, I've started just having tons of conversations. So there's like a little bit of Cambrium explosion going on, and everybody's doing really, really cool stuff. And you touched on some of them, right? Like, trying to solve for attribution in Web3 is awesome, because that probably was the biggest headache for me, in the first 6 months of my job. It just didn't exist. And we ended up having to hack together a couple of existing Web2 attribution tools, as well as doing some things on our own side just to get it working in Web3. It's amazing that people coming now can just use, tools existing. Wallet relationship management is really, really cool to me. I'm starting to see a couple too that are able to actually attach hot wallet addresses to social media accounts, which is kind of scary, but also really powerful from, a growth marketer's perspective. There's a lot of Quest and Soulbound token related attribution kind of projects coming out as well. So, I think it's really, really exciting. But it's all very early. I would actually be really curious kind of what Jon and Dan are seeing on this front too, because I'm still even shaping my thoughts on it, to be honest.
Love it. Dan, jump in.
Yeah, I mean, not sure how much I can add to this one because it's something that we are literally exploring at this stage right now. I think, being able to, with wallet addresses connected to marketplaces, connected to social media accounts. I mean, this opens up an entire new realm of what you can do with sort of tracking addresses and marketing, and whether it's user acquisition. And, I think, I put my hands up and say, I think this is still quite early, or we are also, I'm personally at this stage where I'm diving into it right now to learn as much as possible, but it is something we're discussing as to what we can do. And I think there's going to be a huge opportunity here for marketing. I think it really is, that's the next sort of, it's something that's completely unique to Web3. And I think this is something that once this really does open up and we start to see this in action and bringing in a lot of results as well, I think this is going to be a big driver for traditional game developers to sort of consider exploring the Web3 world a little bit more than what they currently are.
Jon, jump in, and then I've got some follow-ups on this.
So, few thoughts. One, there's a lot of lawyers getting really rich over this. When you think about GDPR, what is the Web3 version of GDPR?
You went exactly where I was going to go. Web3, right? I mean, I have johnkassir.eth, and you can see a lot about.
But I think this is the thing I'm curious about. So I think you've got, again, think about audiences, you've got the Web3 degens. We kind of know like the whole concept of blockchain and what you can scrape and find out. What I'm interested to see is, as this next billion come on board and everything we're talking about matures, how are they going to feel about the idea of all of a sudden, like everything, all of the digital data or wherever it lives is now fully transparent? Because that was one of the big challenges in Web 2. Obviously, if you think about the most recent thing with ATT, you now have the choice about whether to be tracked or not at a most simplistic level. So I think I'm quite curious about that because, I've seen a lot of really cool startups fail around the premise of, in Web 2, allowing people to monetize and have control of their data that actually, with the backdrop of Cambridge Analytica, you would have thought people actually give a shit about, but turns out that they actually don't. And those businesses failed. And I've already seen some of these trying to do the same in Web3. And I'm kind of curious to see how this plays out, because that is one of the interesting things with marketeers in Web3 is that through wallet creation, you get email address, social login, the whole wealth of data that is, for me, so long as you let people know what they're opting in for, I think that it's our job to bring them something really cool in Web3 where they don't actually even question that or even think, oh, hang on a minute, how do they know that about me? Where do they get that from? Because the whole experience is so cool. And as we were already talking about, there is that return. There's a clear, whether it's ownership, and that's a big word, but there is something that they are putting in and getting a reward for it. And now perhaps finally blockchain technology solves this problem that Web2 we couldn't quite figure out. So yeah, I think, and to be able to do that successfully, your original question that we've gone on tangent for, is this attribution piece. And the thing I find curious is still a lot, again, people have got business to run. I still find a lot of these companies I talk to are very focused on browser-based experiences right now in gaming, because that's where a lot of the sort of original eyeballs are. And it's like, okay, how about mobile? It's like, oh, no, we're not touching that. We'll leave that to like AppsFlyer and Adjust and Kachava, right? Singular, whoever. And I find that kind of interesting. I'm like, okay, but why are you not building like cross-platform? Because that's where it is and where it's going. They're like, oh, well, we'll just focus on browser for now. So it's nice to see actually a few cross-platform attribution companies now figuring this out.
You hit the nail right on the head, right? Is that in the Web3 world, I mean, people used to think crypto, hey, private money. Not really, actually, as many people who have tried to steal some have found out, right? The blockchain is there and it's public and there's a public record. And maybe we're going to need some kind of evolution in wallets, right? Because do I want everybody to be able to drop stuff on my wallet? Do I need like a private part of a wallet and a public part of a wallet? Do I want to, hook up my wallet to every Web3 experience I come across and think, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then find out, oh, shoot, there was an error in the smart contract and my wallet got drained. And oops, I'm screwed. It's a challenging, still evolving ecosystem that isn't necessarily completely safe for the normies, as somebody said. Any thoughts on that, Quinn?
Yeah, the space as a whole definitely has a long way to go to, making it to the point where my mom is comfortable onboarding into Web3. But my mom was also uncomfortable using email, like 15 years ago. And guess what? Nowadays, if you don't use email, you don't participate in society, right? So of course she's very comfortable with email now. But we're just kind of waiting on that moment to come with Web3, and it's inevitable. It absolutely will. But there's definitely a bit of a watershed that has to happen.
I think we should start to bring this to a bit of a close. And it seems from what I've heard from each of you, it's still a little bit wild, wild west, still a little bit gorillas in the mist, not totally clear. And Quinn, you said that's the most exciting thing about this world right now. Yeah. We're inventing it, we're building it as we come. If somebody is engaging in or thinking about engaging in marketing a Web3 experience, platform, game, maybe I'll ask each of you to give your 3 minutes advice. And who shall I pick on first? I think Dan, go for it.
Yeah, great question. And I think it's my piece of advice would be to fully immerse yourself in this space to a point where you've been there, done that, and you've experienced things such as buying NFTs and creating wallets and, minting your first NFT, to seeing how different projects conduct their mint, to, the full circle of transferring crypto from wallet addresses to exchanges to coming, withdrawing that back into your bank account.
I think one would be about being very deliberate about who you're targeting. A lot of projects, they see these awesome growth hacks that, and large NFT sales and X to earn nomenclature can do for your project. And it definitely can. But you got to keep in mind, you're not really going to be attracting long-term high LTV users at that point. You're attracting either like scholars who are kind of net negative LTV, or you're attracting speculators who can actually kind of crash all of your assets. So I think that would be a major focus for me. And then the other two are, there are actually some really cool growth tech projects out there that can help you in the early days, which we didn't have at Axie. These are the projects I've just seen in the last 2 months. So I would explore those. A project by the name of Safari with a Y, Samary, by Justin Vogel comes to mind. And he actually just put out a tweet like 2 weeks ago where he kind of did like a diligence on all of the Web3 growth tech space. And he identified like 80 different projects and everything they were doing. I think that would be a really awesome place to start as well, to see what is a strong fit for the early days of actually building a community, building a project. Maybe if I can plug one more piece, I know I'm kind of speaking a bit ad nauseum here, but one thing I like to say all the time, and Jon Hook, I know you've heard me say this before, but it's so true, right? In Web3 or in Web2, what people say is your first goal is to find your first million paying customers. In Web3, it truly is to find the first 10,000 co-owners of your network, right? Because when you're decentralizing ownership through a value capture token, whether it's a governance token or it's the NFT of your projects itself, you are truly bringing on co-owners of your network in these community members. And so being comfortable getting concierge, getting white glove kind of service to actually find these first key community members, that is the cornerstone of what you're building going forward.
Interesting. Super interesting. Your first 10,000 co-owners. Absolutely love it. Jon, your 3 minutes of advice?
3 minutes. So I think the first one is just get into the Web3 mindset. I think one of the biggest challenges of moving from Web2 to Web3 is just this attitude of, I've done it before in Web2. This is just kind of how it works, and just cut and paste. And, Quinn's just, that analogy of your first, 10,000 co-owners, right? Well, there you go, right? Totally different mindset. So, to prepare yourself for that, you need to just start getting involved in some projects. Doesn't mean you have to buy the NFT, but just start hanging out in Discord and start listening and understanding some of those core differences that you just don't get in Web2. So I think that's really crucial. Two, you've heard a lot on this podcast already. Start doing your research about your Web3 sort of growth stack, because there's a lot of really exciting new companies out there. And I agree about Safari. I met Justin last week, and I think what they're doing is really interesting and a great initiative. So I think just early on, start looking and talking to as many like Web3 partners as you can to analyze and make some decisions on, right, what do we do in-house? What can we build on top of versus what do we absolutely need to partner with and build up knowledge in? And, the third thing, given that we're all kind of in gaming, is again, make some decisions based on 1 and 2 about what it is you're building. Because I still see the future with 2 types of games, right? Like mobile first, like amazing. There are games first and foremost that, depending on whether it's AAA, mid-core RPG, hyper casual, are going to require a different tech stack. Versus, there is absolutely nothing wrong. And I feel bad because I think people are just being a bit down on like GameFi, and I think that is a different beast in its own right. And it's perfectly okay. And it's kind of like, gamers versus GameFi, just like hating on each other. But I think if that's what you're going down, that's great. But it's obviously, the clues in the name is more DeFi heavy, and the kind of like tooling and the expectation of the people within that are clearly going to be more finance orientated. So make sure that, again, there's going to be some similarities in terms of growth stack, but some of the back end, especially if you start thinking about the wallet and the concept of like staking and what that looks like, will look very different to that GameFi audience versus maybe a more traditional gaming audience.
That's a great point, Jon. And you know what? Some nations are Switzerland, some are, the United States of America, right? There's different nations for different types of people, and that's 100% fine. No worries. Dan, we kind of lost you in the ether there. You were lost in the metaverse. You came back. Thank you. Can you restart your sort of 3 minutes of advice for somebody who is brand new to Web3 marketing and what you would suggest they do?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for allowing me back in. I thought the internet would hold up at least 5-10 more minutes for me. But yeah, I really do think that in order to really get ahead of the game and to market in the most efficient way possible, I really do think that you need to immerse yourself in the entire realm of Web3 as much as possible. I would go as far to say that it would be worth buying some NFTs. It would be worth having staked some NFTs. It'd be worth experiencing a mint and an airdrop and how all of that works from being a customer from that point of view. And I think until you really have gone through the hardships of not knowing if your money transferred or your crypto transferred from one wallet to the next, or to actually doing it and losing money, I think until you've really lost some crypto or been rugged by a few NFT projects, this may sound silly, but I think until you've experienced that, you can't fully relate with what your customers in the future might be thinking and have gone through. So yeah, you need to be rugged in order to be good at, No, I think, just to touch on what Jon mentioned there, I think, there's so much research that should be done. You really need to read a lot of books, but there probably won't be so many books out just yet on all of this. So I would be watching podcasts like this to, cipher as much as possible and to really go through the entire experience, research. But on top of that, just trial and error. All of this at the moment, I would say, is a whole lot of testing, and you've just got to get your hands dirty and try it. When it fails, look back at what failed and then try something new next time.
I really, if I may, Jon, I really love that last point, Dan. I think that failure is not just part of the development process in Web3, but like public failure is part of the development process in Web3. And you just got to be ready for it, and you got to lean into it. And your community is so much more forgiving because they're your co-owners alongside you.
Oh, wow. I love it. Dan is all like of the suffer sucker school of learning how to market to Web3. And Quinn is like the masochist. I'm suffering and it's in public. In that spirit, I have a confession to make for you guys. I told you guys I just came back from Web Summit, and this is my first morning, kind of on European time still. So I was up really early. I usually don't get down into my office space here till like 8 a.m. I came in at like 7 a.m. and guess what was on my calendar? This. And I had totally forgotten it was like my first day back. I hadn't prepped. I hadn't, I'll ask this person that thing and this person that thing. I think it kind of worked out, honestly. And I want to thank each of you guys. Jon, amazing insights. Really do appreciate it. You pulled this together as well. You pulled these guys together. Thank you for that. Quinn, so great to hear from you, and Axie Infinity, what you guys are doing there. Dan, First Light Games, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you guys all, and maybe we'll do this again in 6 months, and maybe we'll know more.